Hey everybody, I'm Joshua Orro, the Mustang Prince, and welcome to Mustang Prince Orro Reports. Now last time, I did a blog on Disney's 1994 animated smash hit, The Lion King, which is considered as one of the best animated films of all time, with breathtaking hand-drawn animation, likable characters, awesome songs, and a good moral. Plus, not only did it get 2 Oscar awards, but it also influenced the Timon and Pumbaa show and a Broadway musical, which I got to see in 2002. But afterwards, The Lion King received its first direct-to-video sequel, which is what I'll be sharing with you today. Released to home video on October 27th, 1998, the movie is The Lion King 2: Simba's Pride. Now, on for the plot of the movie. In this film, Simba and Nala have a daughter named Kiara, who is eager to explore beyond the Pride Lands, but Simba tries to shelter her from danger. One day while exploring, Kiara ventures into the Forbidden Outlands and meets a young lion cub named Kovu, whom she immediately becomes friends with. Unfortunately, Kovu is the son of Zira, a banished follower of the now dead Scar, who plans to raise Kovu to overthrow Simba and become the new king of the Pride Lands. A few years later, on the day of her first solo hunt, Kovu saves Kiara from a wildfire, and Simba reluctantly accepts him into his pride. And as the 2 young lions get to know each other and fall in love, with some help from Rafiki, they begin to see that the 2 prides should be united and not divided. So, what do I think of this sequel? Well, in my personal opinion, this is a great sequel, but personally, it's not as good compared to most Disney sequels like Frozen 2, Ralph Breaks the Internet, The Three Caballeros, Cinderella 3, Fantasia 2000, The Little Mermaid 2, Aladdin and the King of Thieves, or The Rescuers Down Under. And to further explain what I mean, let's head over to Mustang Notes. Now, in May 1994, discussions had begun about the possibility of a direct-to-video sequel to The Lion King before the first film had ever been released in theaters. In January 1995, it was reported that a Lion King sequel was to be released in the next 12 months. However, it was delayed, and then it was reported in May 1996 that it would be released in early 1997. By 1996, Daryl Rooney had signed on to direct the movie, while Janine Roussel would serve as producer. In April 1996, Jane Leeves of Frasier fame had been cast as Binti, who was to be Zazu's girlfriend, but unfortunately, the character was ultimately dropped. In August 1996, Cheech Marin reported that he would reprise his role as Banzai the hyena from the first movie, but sadly, the character was ultimately cut from the sequel. Also, Simba's daughter was originally going to be named Aisha, but she was ultimately renamed to Kiara after it was discovered that Aisha was the name of a female Power Ranger, and the young villain in training turned hero who attempts to romance her was originally going to be named Nunca, but he was renamed Kovu. Then Disney CEO Michael Eisner urged for Kovu's relationship to Scar to be changed during production, as being Scar's son would make him Kiara's first cousin once removed. According to director Rooney, the final draft gradually became a variation of Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet. He said, "It's the biggest love story we have, and the difference is that you understand the position of the parent in this film in a way that you never did in the Shakespeare play." Because none of the original animators were involved in the production, The majority of the animation was done by Walt Disney Television Animation Studio in Sydney, Australia. However, all storyboarding and pre-production work were done at the Feature Animation Studio in Burbank, California. The additional animation was by Disney's Canadian Animation Studio in Toon City in Manila, Philippines. By March 1998, Disney confirmed that the sequel will be released on October 27, 1998. Now, before we move on, I just want to say that I find it both funny and interesting that this movie was released not long after my first trip to Walt Disney World and its newest theme park at the time, Animal Kingdom. And I heard that more than 15 million copies of the movie have been sold, and it became one of the top-selling direct-to-video releases of all time, with about $464.5 million worldwide in sales and rentals. And what are my thoughts on the animation? Well, while it's not as good as the first movie's art style, I still think the animators did a pretty good job with designing the Pride Lands and the Royal Lion's home of Pride Rock, which both look beautiful and professionally done. Also, the newest location, being the termite-infested Outlands, looks pretty similar to the Elephant Graveyard, but not as spooky or foreboding. As for the story, well, I do like that it was inspired by Romeo and Juliet. And like Romeo and Juliet and Romeo and Juliet Sealed with a Kiss, I like that the main lovers don't die in this movie. Plus, some folks have been telling me that this sequel inspired a few episodes from The Lion Guard, which will be a topic for next time. Also, I thought the most memorable parts of the movie would have to be the scene where Kiara and Kovu try to escape a crocodile-infested river and the rhino chase. Also, I thought the wildfire scene and Simba's nightmare were pretty intense, and the final battle between the Pridelanders and the Outsiders was very thrilling, and I'm glad that Kovu and Kiara put a stop to it together. And now, let's move on to the movie's song numbers, and in my opinion, these songs are pretty underrated. First we have the opening song, He Lives in You, performed by Lebo M and Chorus, where Rafiki presents the newborn Princess Kiara before all the animals of the Pride Lands. Fun fact, a long time ago, this song was originally going to be used for the first movie, but it unfortunately got scrapped, and it later was used for the Broadway adaptation starting in 1997. Plus, I think this song is equally as great an opening song as The Circle of Life, and I find it to be a lot better than the Morning Report song, which was put into the special edition version during the early 2000s. Also, I really love the part where we see Mufasa proudly watching the presentation of his new granddaughter from the heavens. Next up, we have We Are One, sung by Simba and Kiara. To me, this is a pretty good father-daughter song, and I like that it's a musical equivalent to the first film's talk about the great kings of the past with Mufasa and Simba. Plus, during this song, Kiara has a solo where she asks her father if it's okay that she wants to be herself, which I find is very sympathetic. Another thing that I like regarding this song is Simba's singing voice, which is now provided by Cam Clark, who you might know as Leonardo from the 1980s Ninja Turtles cartoon, and, believe it or not, he would later voice Simba in Kingdom Hearts 2. Next we have the villain song, My Lullaby, sung by Zira, Nuka, and Vitani. To me, this song is nasty, but in a good way. And I like how it starts out as a sweet and simple lullaby, but after Kovu falls asleep, it then switches to an evil song of revenge, where Zira expresses her feelings over her exile and her dreams to have Kovu kill Simba and usurp the throne. Our next song is Upendi, sung by Rafiki, where he describes love and happiness with Kovu and Kiara while playing matchmaker with some help from several safari animals. In my eyes, this song is really catchy, and I think it's almost reminiscent to Hakuna Matata and I Just Can't Wait to Be King. Plus, it's my absolute favorite song in this sequel. Next up is the Banishment song, Not One of Us, sung by the animals of the Pride Lands following Kovu being permanently banished and exiled by Simba for his supposed betrayal in an attempt to kill him, which he had nothing to do with. To me, this song is okay on its own, but at the same time, I find it to be a bit mean-spirited due to the animals attacking Kovu while running him away from Pride Rock. And finally, we come to the romantic song, Love Will Find a Way, sung by Kiara and Kovu, where they decide that their mutual romantic love is too strong and true for their differences to keep them apart. To me, this has got to be one of the most beautiful romance songs that I've ever heard in a Disney sequel, and I really like that Kiara's singing voice is provided by Liz Calloway, whom I saw at the ArcLight Cinema in Los Angeles during the Swan Princess 25th anniversary pink carpet event back in 2019. Anyway, now that we're done with Mustang notes, animation, and songs, let's move on to the characters and their voice actors. Now let's start with the ruler of the Pride Lands, King Simba, voiced by Matthew Broderick, best known from Ferris Bueller's Day Off, Disney's 1999 Inspector Gadget movie, Mel Brooks' The Producers, 2008's The Tale of Despero, and 2019's Wonder Park. In this film, Simba is no longer overly adventurous or outgoing. Instead, he becomes humble and rather soft-spoken, even in the face of his family and closest friends. From the trauma of his father's tragic death, Simba also becomes anxious and overprotective, especially with his daughter Kiara, as he had feared the dangers that lurked in the Pride Lands. Also, while Simba is shown to be a wise and respected ruler, there are times throughout the movie where Simba can be a bit out of character due to his stubbornness and his prejudice against those who retain loyalty to Scar. Plus, I think Simba kind of tries a bit too hard to be someone who he's not. And believe me, if Sora ever saw Simba behave like this in a future Kingdom Hearts game, he wouldn't be too pleased, especially since he once told him,
"You can't be Mufasa, you can only be you."
But thankfully, after Kiara reminds Simba of what he once told her when she was a cub, that they are one, meaning that both prides are no different from each other, Simba finally opens his eyes and reconciles with his daughter. Next is his daughter, Princess Kiara, voiced by Neve Campbell, best known as Sydney Prescott from the Scream franchise, but as a cub, she's voiced by Michelle Horn. Now, I'd like to let everybody know that Kiara is one of my top 11 other Disney princesses, and in my eyes, while she does have the adventurous and curious personality that her father once had, she's also strong-willed, and she possesses a strong desire for independence and self-sufficiency. Plus, I like that Kiara sees past Kovu's rough exterior to the kind character within, and I like that she cares for her enemies, as shown when she tries to rescue Zira from falling down the cliff into the river. Next we have Kovu, Zira's son, Scar's successor, and Kiara's love interest, voiced by Jason Marsden, best known as Goofy's son Max from the Goofy movies, Thackeray Binks from Hocus Pocus, and Haku from Hayao Miyazaki's first Oscar-winning animated film, Spirited Away. But as a cub, he's voiced by Ryan O'Donoghue, aka Organization 13's Demix. To me, Kovu is very relaxed, kind, and friendly, and he doesn't necessarily believe in his mother's cruel, violent, and evil ways, even as a cub. Plus, even though Kovu was taught by Zero to be evil and believed that Simba was the enemy, thankfully, Kovu does soften up while befriending Simba and falling in love with Kiara. And I like that he's willing to put his past behind him, no matter how terrible it is. By the way, there's something that's always been in my mind ever since 2006. I wonder what it'd be like if Kovu ever met Sora, since they almost resemble each other as cubs. Also, nowadays, Kovu wouldn't be the only lion, other than Scar, to get a scar on his face. The other lion would be Simba's son Kion, but again, that's a topic for later. Next is Simba's wife, Nala, once again voiced by Moira Kelly. As Queen of the Pride Lands, Nala is much more reserved and wise, and I like that she's very understanding with Kiara, trusting her daughter to take care of herself and making her own choices. Plus, her gentle words and sound advice serve as a softener to Simba's hard edge. Also, I like that Nala is one of the few who is able to see past Kovu's rough exterior to the hero who is longing to claw out, and she's not one to judge him for his past. Next up is the Royal Major Domo, Zazu, this time voiced by Edward Hibbert, whom was in Uptown Girls and 2005's Once Upon a Mattress. To me, Zazu's role isn't as big as in the first movie, but I like that he still serves his duty as royal messenger. Plus, I like that in one scene, he tries to assure Simba that Kiara will be fine before the wildfire starts, and he is sent ahead to find her. Next is Rafiki, voiced by the late Robert Gulliam, who also voiced Mr. Thicknose in the 8th Land Before Time movie. In this film, Rafiki is shown to be more intertwined in the politics of the Pride Lands while remaining a shaman and a wise figure, having the ability to speak with the spirit of Mufasa. Speaking of which, the scene where Mufasa tells Rafiki that Kiara and Kovu should fall in love in order to break the feud is one of my favorite scenes in this movie, and it kind of makes Rafiki the Friar Lawrence of the movie. Next we come to Timon and Pumbaa, voiced by Nathan Lane and Ernie Sabella. To me, Timon and Pumbaa are still the funniest characters in this whole franchise, and during this film, they are assigned by Simba to keep watch on Kiara. Also, I like the part where they try to get Kiara to eat bugs just like they did with Simba, which unfortunately fails due to her getting grossed out, and the part where they teach Kovu how to have fun while they were struggling with some birds that were eating their food. Plus, while their bickering can be pretty funny at times, I thought their funniest moment was when Timon uses Pumbaa's tail like a gun. Plus, I think Pumbaa was pretty strong to carry an injured Simba on his back. Next on our list are Kovu's siblings, Nuka and Vitani, voiced by Andy Dick and Meredith Scott Lynn. To me, between the two, Nuka sticks out the most. Despite being the oldest of Zira's children, he is neglected by his mother in favor of Kovu. Plus, I find him to be slightly neurotic, and he has an inflated opinion of himself as he claims to be the strongest and the smartest of all the outsiders, as well as bullheaded, bitter, and unstable. And I thought he was very vicious to go after Simba himself in order to earn his mother's praise. Plus, I think the part where he sets the wildfire around himself was pretty silly, and the scene where Nuka dies by being crushed under several logs while accidental was very tragic. Vitani, on the other hand, while not having too many scenes, is something of a tomboy due to her growing up in such a sterile environment. Plus, she has a tendency towards making sardonic taunts, or sly remarks. Plus, after Kiara's speech, Vitani sees the error of her ways and becomes the next outsider after Kovu to rejoin Simba's pride. And I know this is off topic, but sometime later, she also becomes the leader of her own formed lion guard consisting of all the lionesses. Also to note, I think Lacey Chabert does a great performance as young Vitani, and this was during the same year when she started voicing Eliza Thornberry in the Wild Thornberry series. Finally, we come to the new villain, Zira, voiced by the late Suzanne Plachette, who voiced Yubaba and Zeniba in Spirited Away. Ever since she and several other lionesses were banished to the Outlands due to their loyalty to Scar, Zira has been obsessed with plotting revenge by training Kovu in the hope that he will one day kill Simba and take back the throne in Scar's honor. To me, Zira is opportunistic, cynical, and imposing, letting her emotions control her constantly, which usually leads to her launching into venomous rants. Plus, as a villain, she seems to have a fist made of iron spikes, and I think she's more vicious compared to Scar, especially during the scene where she swiped Kovu across the face and blames him for Nuka's demise by not lifting a paw to kill Simba. Plus, I thought Zira was really arrogant when she refused to let go of the past after her fellow lionesses turn against her to join Simba, and when she chooses to die in the river. Also, I must mention that if Zira were to become an enemy in a future Kingdom Hearts game, there's a high % chance that she'd want revenge on Sora too, since he did help Simba defeat Scar when he became a Heartless. And now on to my final words. Overall, The Lion King 2, Simba's Pride is a great sequel, but not one of my personal favorites. The animation is not as good as the first films, but still pretty decent. It has an underrated soundtrack, even though Not One of Us was very mean-spirited. The classic characters are still likable and memorable, even though Simba kind of loses a few points due to his stubbornness, his prejudice, and him trying too hard to be someone who he's not. The main lovers, Kiara and Kovu, make an adorable couple together, and I'm glad that they were able to bring peace to their prides. The villain Zira has got to be one of the most threatening villains in a Disney sequel. The voice acting is excellent, and I like how the story takes inspiration from Romeo and Juliet, and that it includes a message that all lions, no matter who they are or where they come from, are one. Kind of like how people are in reality. So, if you folks are Lion King fans, I highly recommend everybody to give this movie a watch. And above all, I think it makes a worthy addition to the circle of life. As for my rating, I'll give it an 88% out of 100. Well, that's all for now. Be sure to join me next time as we take a look at one more Lion King film, which happens to be the pilot to The Lion Guard. To be continued.